Okay, we're on to the second letter in the acronym, NICER, and it stands for integrity. And Roland, I tell a story in the book about when I took my family to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania. And, a little bit down on my financial luck, I started a business that was ill-advised, and I really didn't have a lot of coin in my pocket. And on the wall, when you walked in, there's a sign that says, under 3, you get in for free. And my son was 3 years old at the time. And I lifted him up and I whispered in his ear and I said, if anybody asks you, you're 2. And we got in, no problem. Had a great day. And on the way back, we stopped at a Bob's Big Boy restaurant. And I situated my family, which was also my daughter and my wife, and we put him in a little corner. And my son was a little chatty little guy. And I went up, got a couple burgers, and I see that he's talking to the people behind us. And as I come back, he's just finishing a story, and he says these words, which I will never, ever forget. The woman says to him, "You are so cute, little boy. How old are you?" And without thinking, he said, "Well, I'm 3, but when I go to Hershey Park, I'm 2. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What integrity. Here I am teaching my son to lie at a young age. Why? To save $30. Talk to me about integrity.
Yeah, integrity is one of these things. It's related to the idea of no compromise that we talked about in the last session, but it's a little bit different. And most of the time, people are talking about integrity as doing things the right way, doing the right thing, even when nobody's looking. And I'm going to tell you that we don't really talk about that in this book. Instead, what we talk about is the small things, doing the small things right, making the right decisions at each point along the way. And so for me, that integrity is encompassing to all aspects of life, whether it's work, family, sex, marriage, friendships, what you're doing in public. It's doing the small things, making the right decisions as you go.
So most people would probably think, oh, here's a perfect place to talk about Joseph and his story. But you stay with the example of Daniel. Why?
Yeah, Joseph is obviously coming to mind right away for a lot of people. And the example of Joseph, Potiphar's wife is chasing after Joseph, come to bed with me. And then she accuses him of sexual molestation or rape, and he gets put in jail. And it all turns out bad for him in the short term, good in the long term. And in our society, we oftentimes we're tying sexual integrity to integrity, so we don't differentiate the word, because that's a big temptation for a lot of men. And what I do is I want to stay with Daniel, because I like Daniel, the way he uses his brain, as we talked about in the last time. And he's put in situations where he could pad an expense account. He could authorize people to spend things and do things on his behalf for his political gain in the organization. He can make things look the way he wants in his domain, but he doesn't. And when the command comes out, don't pray to anybody except the emperor or the king. Don't worship anybody except the boss. Daniel says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep making the right decision. And then you see where the rubber meets the road. These guys that he works with, all the locals are saying, we don't want this outsider, this Jewish guy, to be our second in command for the whole organization. It should be one of us, right? Mm-hmm. And so they try to find some dirt on him. And they dig and they dig and they can't find any fake news. They can't find any dirt, nothing to bring him down. And why is that? It's because every little thing he's done, his expense account, he hasn't stolen pencils from the supply house. He hasn't taken anybody's advantage of anybody. He hasn't done anything where people can say, that's for you, that was a wrong decision. And so it's all these little things that add up. Each one doesn't seem like anything, but when you put them together in a bucket, it's what saved him and what really makes a man.
I had owned a newspaper a few years back, and we were audited twice, once by the IRS and once by the state of New Jersey. And an audit is a scary word. And I will not lie to you, when I got that first one, I was nervous. When it was all said and done, I got what was called a no change letter from the IRS, which for you who may have not been audited, good for you. A no change letter means keep doing everything you're doing. They didn't find me $1, they didn't find one thing. And I just praise God for that. Because it's really a question of, you want to be able to, when you leave this world, you want to know that you're going to be remembered as a man of integrity or a woman of integrity. And I believe, Daniel is just a perfect example of that. So integrity is really more that is developed as a spiritual discipline, and it's something that needs to be bathed in prayer because, let's face it, it doesn't come natural to most people.
It doesn't. And we could take a very simple example. Joe, I'm going to meet you for coffee 9 o'clock tomorrow at the coffee shop. And you say, okay, good, see you there. And I get there at 5 till 9, a little bit before 9, and I'm waiting, and you don't show up till 9:15. Your integrity, you just compromised.
Absolutely.
You just said, I'm more important. I'm not a man of my word, like I said. And my children and in our family and my wife as well, especially, always reminding me, like, you said. And when you say something, as a man, when we say something, we want our word to be golden. Take it to the bank. Yeah. Bob said, Joe said, Dick said. Our word as Christians, this is the key for building the whole foundation of a witness to someone else. And remember, this first word, nicer, we're talking about character. So we're building a character that is solid like Daniel. Nobody can find anything wrong with it. And we're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But there's room for apology. But the integrity starts with the little things. An appointment on time, not cheating here, not doing that, not slacking off, getting back to work after lunch when you're supposed to. All the little things. I've got an example. I met a lady in Africa who is about this tall. I'm very tall. She's very short.
How tall are you? Just for
I'm 6'9".
6'9".
And I think she's 4'6" or something like this. And so generally we sit when we talk. And she told me this story. She said she's a lawyer in a law firm. She grew up in the slums. She got educated through the Compassion Sponsor Program and went to university. And now she's one of the leading lawyers in Nairobi working. She's a partner in a leading law firm. And at the law firm, people have to sign off that, hey, I did this ethics course. I read this ethics thing. I took the test. I handed it in, or I filled it out online. And so she was asked by one of her coworkers, will you sign off here that I did this ethics test? She said, I can't sign off. He said, why not? I didn't see you do it. I don't know that you did it. Oh, come on, Diana, don't be stupid. Of course I did it. And it's just an ethics thing for the HR department. We minimize it. It's just this. You can, of course, do it. It would be against my principles to do something to substantiate that you took the training when I don't know myself that you did it. You may very well have done it, but I cannot sign. That's such a little thing. But for her, it's like compromise and integrity are blending over each other here, as you can see. But she didn't want to give up any of her integrity, her foundation of solidness, her trust, her goodwill with men to anybody. And as men, we don't want to give up our goodwill. We don't want to have anybody find a chink in our armor. It says, well, you do this. When you go to the ball game, you're having 6 beers, and you tell me that you don't like to drink too much, but this is what you're doing. That's an extreme example, but there are many little examples. And that's why Daniel, for me, was much more interesting than Joseph. Joseph is all about the big example. I didn't have sex with the boss's wife. I didn't shag the secretary. I did the right thing as a Christian. But inside, I've got a lot of little things that are wrong. And it's the little things that are going to trip us up.
All right, so I think that's where our focal point should be on this. Your takeaway, your nugget should be, it's not the big things that we're really speaking about. Of course, those come into play, but those are obvious. It's the little things. And I love the example of on time because I am a stickler for that. I believe if you're 5 minutes early, you're late, that kind of thing. I want to make sure that I am respecting your time. And that's what it is. It's really a lack of respect, therefore a lack of integrity. So it's the small things that we really need to take away for integrity. Now, it's time for you to start looking. So why don't you pause it and let's take a look at some of these questions. Have a really solid discussion, whether it's with yourself or with a group.